Hello everyone, Blueknight here and welcome back to the channel. So as you've all likely read in the title, today's video isn't exactly the best news I could possibly talk about, but it was inevitably going to happen someday with the more modern PlayStation consoles. So here it goes. Back on March 29th, Sony had officially announced that they will be shutting down the PlayStation Store on the PS3 on July 2nd, 2021. Alongside what's left of the purchase functionality on the PSP will also go away on the same day, with the PS Vita following shortly afterward on August 27th. So what does this have to do with anything that I usually talk about, you might be asking? Well, since I cover Sly Cooper, Ratchet Clank, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Jak and Daxter on the channel, it affects all of these series, plus a whole lot more, that had games released on these consoles. And it simply means that any games that were released digitally on these free systems will no longer be available to purchase. That includes the entire Sly Cooper series, the Jak and Daxter trilogy, Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier, Daxter on the PSP, which is backwards compatible with the PS Vita by the way, as well as every single PS2 and PS3 Ratchet & Clank game that released before the PS4 reimagining, including the Ratchet & Clank Collection, Deadlocked, which did come bundled with Full Frontal Assault or Q-Force depending on the region that you're in, Tools of Destruction, A Crack in Time, All for One, and Into the Nexus, which, for everyone who's been keeping up with the channel for the past year or so, takes place before Rift Apart. And then there's Quest for Booty, which was a digital-only release in North America, with Europe managing to get a physical release of the game, which can be imported and it works just fine on North American PS3s because the discs are region-free, meaning that they'll work on any PS3 from any country. As for Ratchet & Clank Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank on the PSP, like a lot of PSP games, they can be downloaded and played on a PS Vita, because of the PS Vita's backwards compatibility with digital PSP games. And let's face it, we're never going to get a physical PSP game into a PS Vita. That's just not going to happen. The same thing should go for the Sonic Rivals games, but I'm not 100% sure if they are compatible with the Vita. If you've bought the Sly Cooper collection physically for the PS Vita, Sly Free is not included with the collection. You do get a voucher to download the game separately, but it's long been expired, so your best bet if you want to take Sly on the go is to get the digital version, because it actually includes all free games. And once July 2nd and August 27th come around, you will no longer be able to buy these games, along with so many more, again, for these consoles, digitally speaking anyways. This obviously doesn't affect physical copies that you can still buy from places like GameStop, but outside of that, I'd imagine they're a bit harder to find at an affordable price. So really, it's just cheaper to go with the digital versions while you can. So my advice to you guys right now, if you have a PS3, a Vita, or a PSP, and if you can afford to, get these games digitally and any accompanying DLCs while you still can, because once they're gone, and they're never coming back unless Sony decides to actually port or remaster a bunch of them. Or unless Sony decides to make a PS Vita 2, which I don't think is going to happen in the immediate future. Now, there is some good news to come out of this though. If you have previously purchased a digital game or DLC, you can still re-download it to the respective console if you ever needed to, even after the respective store closure dates. Now honestly, this kinda sucks for anyone who never managed to get any one of these consoles, because that means all of these games will no longer be accessible to anyone who prefers to get digital versions of these games over physical copies, which to me is the best idea to begin with because you actually have the game in your hands and you won't have to worry about Sony removing it from their store or anything like that because you have the physical disc. But what if that disc gets scratched up to the point you can't use it, or your PS Vita cartridge stops working? You wouldn't be able to replace it with a digital copy because the stores are closed down for that console, leaving many people who still have a console already to buy another physical copy. And for those who don't have any of these consoles and instead have a high-end PC for emulating these games, that is an option. Or if you happen to own a currently available PlayStation system like the PS4 or the PS5 and not a PS3, you would have access to the PS Now service. which is where a lot of these games like the Sly Cooper franchise, Sonic Unleashed, and most of the PS3 era Ratchet & Clank games are officially available to play, with Tools of Destruction, the Collection, and Deadlock strangely not being available on the service yet. So the only real way to play these specific games is on a PS3 for Tools and the Collection, and a PS2 for the classic games, which, as you can imagine, are very hard to find these days for affordable prices. Not to mention the fact that you need a rather decent internet connection to really play anything on PS Now. If you don't, you'll either wind up not getting the game to load at all, like what happened to me when I tried playing it on PC, or you'll wind up experiencing lag, resulting in an experience that's not quite as smooth as you would get on the original consoles. Just ask Canadian guy A while he was playing Sly Cooper, he knows what that was like. But this whole situation is a reminder that these older games that will soon be really hard to get a hold of need to be brought to the current gen systems with brand new collections and or ports to allow everyone a chance to purchase, download, and play these games if they missed out on them the first time. Sure, it could be a risky move doing this, like what we've seen in the past with the Ratchet & Clank collection on the PS3, where Ratchet's helmet was too big in the cutscenes for going commando and up your arsenal, with most people winding up using Ratchet's classic skin so he doesn't look so awkward. And I need not to mention how Deadlock's port turned out. The Jak and Daxter collection on PS4, while it does give people another chance to play these iconic games on current hardware, including Jak X, which was never ported to the PS3 for who knows what reason, finally being made available to everyone without the autosave bug that plagued the initial PS2 version. But the collection itself, outside of the first game, had some technical problems, the most prominent thing being frequent frame rate drops. But I take it that most of these issues had to do with these being emulations rather than being proper ports. But in other instances, porting games can actually turn out really good, like the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection on the PS4 for instance. These games not only look better than the PS3 versions, but they also perform better than the original releases. Plus they got extra features. And we all have Blueknight Games to thank for it, who previously remade the PS2 classic Shadow of the Colossus for the PS4, and more recently the Dark Souls remake for the PS5. So if Sony is planning on bringing back more older games to current gen systems in the form of ports or remasters, this would be the perfect time to start announcing that sort of thing, and I have a hunch that we'll be seeing some brand new Ratchet & Clank collections on the way. Why? Well, it's because recently we learned that Sony filed a patent to enable trophy support on older games that previously did not have such a feature, and one of the games that comes to my mind is Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction, which is the only game in the series that to this day still does not have any trophy support, and the same goes for a number of early gen PS3 games. But if this actually comes to fruition, we'll have to wait and see. And the second reason I believe we're getting some more Ratchet & Clank collections on newer systems is the fact that next year, 2022, is Ratchet & Clank's 20th anniversary since their PS2 debut in 2002. And since Rift Apart's launch will likely be a huge success and bring in lots of newcomers, Sony will likely want to pounce on both opportunities to introduce these new fans to the rest of the series, quite possibly with two collections in the vein of the Jak and Daxter PS4 collection, albeit a bit more polished. One for the classic PS2 games, the other for the Future Saga plus All for One, simply because of Nefarious' character arc going into Rift Apart. And I got one last thing to mention before I go. Insomniac Games released a brand new patch for the Ratchet & Clank 2016 reimagining, the first one in years. What this patch does is it finally allows the game to run at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second on the PS5, which is what you're seeing on screen right now with the footage by IGN. Now, if you're expecting the game to run like this on a PS4 or a PS4 Slim, that ain't gonna happen, simply because of the PS4's more limited capabilities compared to the PS5's, and as you can see in my footage captured on a PS4 Slim, it still only runs at 30 frames per second compared to the PS5 footage by IGN. And this is actually very interesting because this is now technically the first Ratchet & Clank game to run at 60 frames per second after 2009's A Crack in Time on the PS3, with Rift Apart being the second one to follow suit. But Ratchet & Clank 2016 is also technically the third game Insomniac made a return to 60 frames per second with. The first two games were the Marvel's Spider-Man games once they both arrived on the PS5, while their PS4 versions were only 30 frames per second. So if you have a PS5 and you happen to own a copy of the 2016 reimagining, be sure to download the update to enjoy some intergalactic blasting in a smooth 60 frames per second. And for those who are wondering, no, this update does not give the bouncer to everyone, which was only available originally as a pre-order bonus. So it's still kind of sad that we're always going to have an empty slot in our quick select menu. But anyways guys, that's going to be about it for this video. As usual, leave your thoughts or really anything down in the comment section below, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell to stay up to date on all things Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper, and so much more. Once again, thank you all so much for watching and the support. I've been Blueknight, and I'll see you guys back here next time.
What?